Hello everyone. In today's grammar lecture, we will begin addressing the bane of every college student's existence, commas. This video will only cover the first 5 rules for correct comma usage. We will cover the final 4 rules next week. Before we begin, let's quickly review identifying the 4 types of sentences: simple, compound, complex, and compound complex. Pause the video a moment to review the questions. I'll provide the answers on the next slide. Alright, here are the answers. Sentence 1 is complex because it includes the dependent clause, if you're going to build an AI. Sentence 2 is simple because it contains only one independent clause. Sentence 3 is compound complex because it contains 2 dependent clauses, because my sister wants to work with AI and if she wants to make AI ethical. Each of these is connected to its own independent clause, and a coordinating conjunction but connects these to form one sentence. Sentence 4 is a compound sentence because it has 2 independent clauses connected by the coordinating conjunction and. Sentence 5 is complex because it includes the dependent clause since she phrased it so poorly. Notice this dependent clause comes at the end of the sentence rather than at the beginning. Alright, now let's get to commas. The first rule of commas is that they must be used when joining 2 clauses together with a coordinating conjunction to create a compound or compound complex sentence. Remember, a coordinating conjunction is for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so, also known as fanboys. Here are a few examples. In the first 2 examples, the comma and conjunction are connecting 2 independent clauses to form a compound sentence. In the final example, they are connecting the complex sentence. If we use AI to do all our jobs, I don't know that what we'll do to make a living, to the simple sentence, I think we need to put more regulations in place to form a compound complex sentence. Commas are also used to set off introductory words, phrases, and clauses. Usually these words could be removed and the sentence would still make sense without them. In the first example, also is acting as a transition from a previous sentence. You would also include a comma if you used other transition words such as first, then, finally, and however. In the second example, the sentence begins with a prepositional phrase. A prepositional phrase usually provides information about location, time, and the relationships between objects. These begin with prepositions such as about, between, under, in, around, so on. I have added a list of prepositions to the supplementary material for this week. In the final example, the sentence begins with a dependent clause. As we've seen in previous examples of complex sentences, if the dependent clause comes at the beginning of the sentence, we use a comma at the end of the clause. If it comes after, we don't use a comma. The third rule for comma usage is that they must be used to separate items in a series or list of 3 or more words, phrases, or dependent clauses. However, if you ever write a list of 3 or more independent clauses, you'll use a semicolon instead. In the first example, we've got a list of 3 verbs. In the second, we have a list of noun phrases. Now, in the humanities and in this class, we make use of the Oxford comma. This is the comma that comes before the conjunction in a list. We do this to ensure clarity. For example, if we were to leave off the Oxford comma, it could be read to mean that Henry Cavill and Cher are in fact robots. The fourth rule of comma usage is to set off non-essential or extra information provided to clarify a noun. It can be removed from the sentence without changing the meaning. Let's look at the second example here. If we already know which tree is being discussed, the phrase in the middle is not required. However, if there are several trees down in the yard, this information may be essential to know which one to remove. If it is essential, then we don't set it off with commas. The fifth rule is similar to the fourth rule. It's used to set off parenthetical information in a sentence. Parenthetical is something that interrupts the flow of the sentence, like an aside that you might say under your breath. As with some of the previous rules, the information between the commas could be removed and the sentence would still work. It is important to note that a sentence may have conditions that require you to follow all 5 of these rules. Here is one example. When I was a teenager is Rule 2 on introductory words, phrases, and clauses. The phrase, "the kind with robots, aliens, and smart spaceships," is Rule 4, with non-essential information explaining science fiction. And robots, aliens, and smart spaceships is Rule 3, on items in a list. The "and" with complete sentences on either side is Rule 1, joining clauses together to create, in this case, a compound complex sentence. And if I remember correctly, is a parenthetical, so that's Rule 5. Pause the video and take a few moments to look over these sentences. Where do you think commas should be added? Here are the answers. In sentence 1, we have extra information about which groups and a list of those groups. The use of "such as" helps us identify the extra information here. In sentence 2 is a list of internet information sources. In sentence 3, we have a joining of clauses to create a compound sentence. It could be argued that "who imagine utopias" should be set off with commas as extra information. This really depends on whether or not we're talking about this one specific group of people, or if we're trying to say that all people imagine utopias. If it's a specific group, we would leave off the commas to specify the group. If we believe all people imagine utopias, this information is extra description of people as a whole and requires commas. In sentence 4, we have an introductory clause and a parenthetical clause, "I sincerely hope." If you have any questions about the first 5 comma rules, or you'd like to set up a Zoom conference, contact me at Mohon-Doyle K@apsu.edu.